Right now, Thomas Markle Jr. has lashed out at his sister in the most brutal interview he has ever given.
Royal family, you should be so thankful this woman wanted to leave, because she's not going to bring any good to the branding of royal. She's going to downgrade it to a level of ghetto, and that's what it is. This is just bad.
1 year ago, in a hospital room far from the cameras, a man lost his leg while the daughter who built a global brand on compassion didn't even show up, and that single moment quietly cracked open a story far darker than anyone was supposed to see. The timeline doesn't just feel cold, it feels calculated.
Now, after this point, when you've had 7 years knowing my father's phone number, it hasn't changed for 15 years. It's the same phone number. You have not reached out. You have not texted. You have not called.
Thomas Markle lies in a hospital bed, his world shrinking to pain, silence, and waiting. While across the world, Meghan Markle continues filming, continuing appearances, continuing the image. No emergency flight.
Someday Meghan's going to realize that she's obviously missing out on a really good, tight-knit family. I mean, we're all still together all the time, no matter what. And you can't put a price on that.
No last-minute cancellation. Not even a rushed appearance that could have rewritten everything. Instead, a delayed letter arrives days too late to matter, and then she returns straight back to the cameras, as if nothing happened.
In my opinion, she would still be a waitress if it wasn't for Dad.
That gap between crisis and response becomes the first clue, not of distance, but of decision. And that's where the contradiction starts to scream. The same woman presented globally as the Queen of Kindness, the humanitarian voice speaking from Netflix specials and polished interviews, is now placed directly against a moment where kindness would have required no speech, just presence. The mansion, the global platform, the carefully curated empathy suddenly feel less like character and more like construction. Because if compassion is real, it shows up when no one is watching. Here, it didn't. Now the story sharpens into something harder. This isn't framed as a misunderstanding or a missed call. It becomes a pattern anchored in one brutal fact: Thomas Markle has been cut off for 7 years. Not gradually, not with attempts at repair, but completely calls unanswered, messages ignored, a line gone silent. And in that silence, a new narrative grows, one where the father who funded everything becomes an absence, almost erased from the public version of Meghan Markle's life. So the question shifts. Not what happened, but when did the decision happen? Because this didn't begin in that hospital room. It began years earlier, at the exact moment the fairy tale was supposed to peak. Just days before Meghan Markle married Prince Harry, Thomas Markle suffered a heart attack. The timing was devastating. The optics, even worse. A father too ill to attend the biggest moment of his daughter's life. And instead of pause, instead of delay, the wedding moved forward at full speed, watched by billions, with Prince Charles stepping in to walk her down the aisle. A symbolic replacement, a public rewriting of who mattered in that moment. That single decision didn't just solve a logistical problem, it redrew the emotional map. Because once the wedding moved ahead without him, the father became optional in the story. And once someone becomes optional, it's easier to remove them entirely. From there, the silence hardens. The last conversation between father and daughter happens around that hospital bed. He hangs up hurt, she doesn't call back. And what follows isn't conflict, it's absence. 7 years of it. Even as Prince Harry reportedly sends messages in those final days pleading, urging contact, nothing shifts. The line stays dead. And the man who once paid for every acting class, every opportunity, every step into Hollywood is reduced to waiting. That's where the power dynamic flips. Thomas Markle is no stranger chasing relevance. He is a 2-time Emmy winner who worked in American television lighting, a man who invested everything into his daughter's future. He built the foundation that carried her into the spotlight. And yet, as that spotlight grows, he disappears from it entirely. Not naturally, not quietly, but forcefully. Then, the consequences escalate. 2 grandchildren, Archie and Lilibet, exist in a world he has never been allowed to enter. Not once. Not a single meeting in 7 years. A grandfather cut off not just from a daughter, but from an entire future generation. And when a stroke later takes his voice, forcing him to relearn speech, the silence becomes even more brutal. Because now, Even the ability to ask for connection has to be rebuilt from nothing. And still, nothing changes. Now the narrative tries to defend itself. One mistake staged photos before the wedding becomes the official justification. But the punishment doesn't match the crime. Apologies are made. Repeatedly, publicly, yet the exile remains permanent. No second chance. No quiet reconciliation. Just a complete removal. And that imbalance starts to look less like consequence and more like strategy. Because while Thomas Markle is cut off, the public image accelerates. Speeches about empathy, appearances about kindness, a brand built entirely on emotional connection. And the contrast becomes impossible to ignore. A woman telling the world to be kinder, while her own father counts birthdays from a distance, sending flowers that return unanswered. Then the story widens and gets colder. It's not just Thomas Markle. The same pattern begins to echo elsewhere. Prince Charles, now King Charles, steps in at the wedding when Thomas cannot. He offers legitimacy, status, protection, everything needed to solidify Meghan Markle's place inside the royal family. But later, when he faces illness himself, battling cancer, the response feels eerily familiar. Prince Harry makes a brief visit. Meghan Markle does not come at all. 2 fathers, 2 moments of vulnerability, 2 absences. That repetition is not coincidence. It's pattern, and once patterns emerge, they start pointing somewhere uncomfortable. Because now the story isn't about a single broken relationship. It's about a consistent decision-making style, a hierarchy of priorities where image, control, and narrative seem to outweigh personal ties. Then comes the next layer, the public battles over privacy. The same couple who cut off family members argue fiercely in court that their privacy must be protected at all costs. A private letter becomes a legal war, a symbol of intrusion, a line that cannot be crossed. But hidden inside that battle is a contradiction that changes everything. Because Meghan Markle's own circle reportedly shared parts of that letter first, through friends to a magazine. The story doesn't start with invasion. It starts with controlled release. And suddenly, privacy doesn't look like a principle anymore. It looks like a tool. Used one way when it protects the narrative, used another when it can be monetized. That shift becomes even more obvious when the cameras return. Netflix deals. Memoirs. Private conversations turned into global content. The same boundaries that were defended in court are crossed willingly when the platform is right. Even the children protected in theory appear when the image requires warmth. So the rule becomes clear, even if no one says it out loud. Privacy is sacred when it shields the story, disposable when it sells it. And that realization drags the entire narrative into a darker place. Because now every action, every absence, every carefully timed response starts to look less emotional and more strategic, less reactive and more controlled. By the time the hospital scene returns the missing visit, the delayed letter, the silence, it no longer feels like an isolated failure. It feels like the purest example of the system at work. And that's where the story becomes impossible to close. Because if everything is controlled, if every connection is filtered through image and outcome, then the biggest question isn't what has already happened. It's what is still happening behind the scenes, right now, while the world is still watching the performance. And whether that unanswered phone line still open after 7 years is the one detail that could collapse the entire story if it ever rings again. That is the detail that refuses to disappear. Every public appearance, every carefully crafted speech about empathy, every interview about healing eventually circles back to the same unanswered question. If compassion begins at home, why does the phone remain silent? According to the source material, Thomas Markle has never asked for Meghan Markle's fortune, never demanded a palace title, never sought a share of the spotlight. His request has remained painfully simple, a conversation and the chance to meet Archie and Lilibet before his life comes to an end. Yet year after year, birthdays pass, Father's Days come and go, flowers are reportedly sent and returned unanswered, and another chapter closes without reconciliation. That is where the entire public image faces its greatest test. Because the humanitarian identity is not challenged by critics, it is challenged by contrast. The source repeatedly places 2 different versions of Meghan Markle beside one another. One is the woman traveling across continents to embrace strangers, standing before the United Nations, speaking about compassion, launching projects centered on kindness and appearing on magazine covers celebrating empathy. The other is the daughter described as remaining absent, while her own father battles heart attacks, a stroke, and ultimately the loss of a leg. The closer those two pictures are placed together, the harder they become to separate. Then the story pushes the contradiction even further. When Prince Harry and Meghan Markle entered legal battles over privacy, they argued that private family communication deserved absolute protection. The letter sent to Thomas Markle became central to that fight. But the source argues that Meghan Markle's own friends had already shared details of that correspondence publicly before Thomas responded. If that sequence is accepted, then the conflict changes completely. Privacy no longer appears as a universal principle. Instead, it begins looking selective defended when it protects one side, but relaxed when it strengthens another. That accusation becomes even heavier when the source connects it to later projects involving Netflix, Prince Harry's memoir, and the publication of private royal conversations. The narrative now widens beyond Thomas Markle and toward the entire royal family. According to the source, cameras become enemies whenever they threaten uncomfortable truths, yet become welcome allies when they support a carefully managed public image. Family privacy is defended in court, while deeply personal royal experiences are later shared commercially through documentaries, interviews, and books. Whether viewers agree or disagree, the source insists that this is not coincidence but a recurring pattern, one that transforms privacy into something flexible rather than fixed. Then comes perhaps the most emotionally charged accusation of all. According to the source, despite everything that has happened, the wedding, years of silence, 2 heart attacks, a stroke, the loss of his leg, and never meeting Archie or Lilibet, he would still answer the phone tomorrow if Meghan Markle called. That lingering hope becomes the emotional center of the entire narrative. The silence may have lasted years, but the expectation has never completely died. An elderly father continues waiting for a conversation that never seems to arrive. And that is where the investigation deliberately refuses to end. Because the source suggests this story was never really about one hospital visit, one wedding, one letter, or one interview. It argues that every event connects into something larger, a struggle over image versus reality, narrative versus memory, public compassion versus private relationships. Every delayed response, every missing visit, every carefully chosen word, every family member left outside the frame is presented not as an isolated incident, but as another piece of the same puzzle. Now, another chapter is already waiting. The source closes by pointing toward the private letter that ignited years of legal battles, asking who truly leaked what, who controlled the narrative first, and whether Thomas Markle became the villain only after challenging the version of events presented to the world. If those unanswered questions ever receive definitive answers, they may not simply reshape one family dispute, they could force people to re-examine everything they thought they knew about the relationship between Meghan Markle, Prince Harry, Thomas Markle, and the carefully protected story that has surrounded them from the very beginning.